Welcome to We Got Balls, real, raw, masculine sex talk with Chris Inman and Scott Cohn. Chris and Scott both work with men who want to leave their unwanted sexual struggles in the past. They are willing to do whatever it takes to help men get curious about what drives their compulsive sexual behavior. With that said, here we go.
Well, hey guys, welcome back to another episode of We Got Balls. And today we are talking about some very, how do I want to say this, Scott? It's a comforting topic. Like if I could take my head and lay them here for the rest of my life, I think I would be happy. I think that would be very, very nurturing for me.
Are you talking about chests or breasts? Because
in the general area, it works. We're talking about breasts. We're talking about natural boobs today. But there's something about the nurture and care of some soft titties that just, I could lay my head on them and just relax and experience a little bit of comfort. It may not be for everybody. I see your face. It may not be for everybody to go there. But, and again, and I'll just be very, very blunt in saying this. I don't know how long I could just lay my head there. I think I would probably have to, start touching a little bit too, because they're very they're so inviting. They're so arousing and attracting.
Don't you think you'd eventually go to using your mouth on them?
I mean, it's a lifelong pursuit, right? It's started when I was young and continued to now.
You came out of the womb wanting to suck on those, and you're probably going to want to suck on them until the last day of your life on Earth. So.
Freud would be proud to know we're talking in this way today. So that's what we're going to be talking about, guys. What is the appeal of natural boobs? And again, we can talk about fake boobs another time. We can talk about the itty bitty titty committee another time. That's a different arousal template. But Scott, when you consider guys who are really in love with women with natural breasts, what comes up for you? Where do you take that?
Well, I go back to the research from A Billion Wicked Thoughts, where they looked at both straight guys and gay identified men and asked them, what body parts are you looking for? They looked at the search data from Pornhub and other search engines on what are the body parts that people are looking for. So, when we talk about our structure and understanding arousal, we always talk about visual cued sexual interests. Mm-hmm. And so this is where that comes from is, out of the body parts that are looked for, the number 4 top ranked term out of all searches for body parts in pornography sites is either chests for guys who are attracted to guys. They look at a man's chest, and for guys that are attracted to women, it's breasts. So breast is the number 4, number 3 is butts, and then number 2 feet, and then the number 1 is penis for both groups of men. But breasts are the thing. And there's a real, not just psychological, but biological reason for that. And that is that, the male brain is designed to first and foremost notice visual sexual cues. And those cues are related to a woman's fertility. Okay. So, and you can go back 5,000 years and you can find depictions of females, whether they're statues or whether they're, religious kind of totems or whatever. And you will see the same kind of figure, the figure 8, big breasts, big butt to hip ratio. It's preferred universally by men in the shape of a woman. Throughout history, throughout culture, there's no distinction. All guys are looking at that figure 8, and it starts with the breasts. And so why is that? Why are, of course, we're talking about natural breasts. So if
you got to realize that artificial boobs have only been around for 50 or 60 years. I mean, there's been enhancement. The corset and the bustier, of course, have been around for a while. But when you're talking about historically, fertility has been defined by this idea of can a woman birth a child? That's the hips and the butt. And can a woman feed a child? That's the breasts.
That's right. So what do breasts then start to symbolize for us sexually as we're developing in our sexuality. So fundamentally, you just talked about it, breasts, when we're born, we come out, we have a sucking reflex, and that's how we are nurtured. That's how we receive comfort. That's how we receive care. So we're at our mother's breast, getting our food, feeling that connection with her, looking her in the eyes while she's looking at us. There's this sense of I'm being connected. And that's how our
attunement in the feeding. Yeah.
That is where the attunement really starts, and the physical touch of that. And, it's very common for baby boys when they're nursing their mother to get an erection. So it is arousing to their body in every sense of the word. And it's where a child develops not only that attunement, like I'm connected with you and you're connected with me, but their sense of identity comes from that. They start to realize that I'm a self and my mother's a separate self. But the fundamental aspect of what sucking does is that sense of being comforted, of taking in nourishment, and of connection. I think those are kind of the three factors at play there in that experience. So you can see that starting out life that way, that's probably never going to go away for a guy.
Yeah. So I think it's important. I mean, the connections are obvious. We're looking for a woman to be fertile, obviously, and we'll talk some more about that coming up in our next episode as well. But we're also looking for the connection, the human connection. That's the attunement, the eye contact, the physical touch. But I think what really is coming up for me, and I'd love for us to explore that, is how is it that something which was biologically functional, like, natural boobs, they work well at feeding children. How does that get sexualized? Where does the transition from what is good and healthy and nurturing get moved into this sexual arousal? I want to see, I want to touch, I want to kiss, caress, suckle on an adult woman's boobs. There is nothing biologically nurturing in that for me as a grown man.
No, but it is emotionally and it is physically arousing to do it, both for you and for the female. In fact, I looked at some research a couple weeks ago on erogenous zones beyond genitals. And interestingly enough, like 90% of women are sexually aroused by having their nipples sucked or caressed. 50% of men are, because we have the same capabilities. In fact, men, a lot of people don't know this, but men can actually produce milk under certain conditions if their hormones are off balance and things like that. But you wouldn't think that men are all that stimulated by having their nipples caressed or sucked, but they are, at least half of all men. So there's something about that connection there that is really sexually arousing to both sexes. But I think if you think about it, this may sound really creepy, but your first love is your mom.
It's too creepy. It's too much, man. I can't do it. I can't go there. Yeah. I can't put her in that box. I've never, even the stepmom porn is kind of like, no, for me, that's not it. But I understand.
I know. You got to stay with me on this.
All right. I'm hanging in there.
When you're a little boy,
okay,
you're drawing pictures with crayons and pieces of paper, and you're drawing them from mom, and you're taking her to her, and you're learning how to connect with the female by playing little romantic games with your mom. Or, if you're a little girl, you're doing that with your dad.
Yeah. She was my Valentine. I will say that. She was my Valentine.
Okay. So you see what I'm saying is, I got you. Every opposite sex child learns to have a loving relationship with an opposite sex spouse or partner by starting and playing that out, role playing that with their mom and their dad very early in life. So sexuality begins to develop at around 3 years of age to up until 11 years of age. But in that 3 years to, 5 or 6 years age, there's this romance that's occurring between the child and their opposite sex parent. And so how do we then begin to sexualize a woman's breasts is quite obvious. You're transferring that attachment relationship with your mother let's say if it's a healthy relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and you feel like you're very cared for and she's very attuned to you and she doesn't reject you. Little kids will say, Mommy, when I grow up, I want to marry you and,
Yeah.
have babies. And a healthy mom doesn't go, that you can't marry me. That's not right. We don't do that.
Right.
A healthy
Right.
mom goes, Sweetie, that's so sweet. I love you too. But daddy is my spouse and you're going to grow up and you're going to find a girl that you're going to love and you can
Yeah.
marry her. So you're training your child in that back and forth, in that kind of romantic play that goes on between a parent and child, how to relate to the opposite sex. So it's very easy to see then how when you go into puberty, then you're gonna start to be erotically drawn to, that connection that you had with your opposite sex parent. If everything goes right,
Sure.
if there's wounds, if there's insecure attachment, there's going to be problems in developing that. So there was a really fascinating book I read a couple months back by Michael Bader called Male Sexuality. And he talks a lot about the male child relationship with the mom and how when that goes off, it ends up showing up in our sexuality later on. So one of the things he talks about was guys that have a particular fetish for big-breasted women. And let's say you grow up with a very insecure attached relationship with your mom because your mom was always anxious and always nervous. And as a little boy, you end up believing that it's your job to soothe your mom's emotions. It's my job to take care of mommy. But you never can. You never can seem to calm her down. You never can seem to soothe her when she's upset. So what are you going to do in terms of when you seek a sexual fantasy? You're going to try to reverse that relationship that you had with your mom that was so fraught with anxiety and a sense of powerlessness. I can't ever make my mom happy. And one of the ways you might do that is...
So what you're saying is, let me get this clear. So if I had a healthy relationship with my mom and I was nurtured by her, I felt cared for, I may or may not have an attachment to boobs as kind of an arousal piece. I may, in repetition, say, "Hey, my mom was nurturing and she was a big-chested woman, so I want a big-chested woman." That might happen, right?
That's right.
Okay, and so, but if the opposite is true, I didn't have a nurturing mother. She was anxious, or she was distant, or she was addicted, or whatever it is that she was coping with. And I'm looking for this maternal image in my sexuality, which kind of answers the question of how does my development, my childhood development, and my biology relate to my sexual arousal. Then maybe when I start getting into porn, I get attracted to these very fertile looking, big breasted women because that symbolizes nurture for me. That symbolizes care and attention, right?
Not only nurture and care and attention, but also the fact that if she's got big breasts and your mom didn't, she symbolizes a woman that's got plenty for you.
I got you.
You don't have to care for her. You don't have to take care of her emotional needs. She's got enough for you to enjoy. So you have to think about it in terms of what's the symbolism behind the size of the breasts too, because it's all about reversing how I felt really disconnected from my mom and my relationship with her. So that could be one way that this shows up in a guy's arousal template, where it's just, I've got to have big breasts in whatever I'm attracted to.
Right.
It's being driven by that psychological dimension, of wanting the comfort and care of a woman that he doesn't really have to do much for, because he felt really smothered by that in his relationship with his own mom.
So more of a mutuality combined with plenty.
Yeah,
she's got plenty to give. She doesn't lack anything in the care department.
I've got enough to give.
There you go.
And just in general, we talk about all guys are attracted by breasts because of the fertility symbol, and you even see this in the Bible, in the book of Proverbs. It talks about the dad's having a conversation with his son in Proverbs 5, and he says, "Son, let your fountain be blessed," which he's talking about his penis. And then he says, let your wife's breasts satisfy you at all times. Like
Mm.
pointing out the breasts. And then in the Song of Solomon, the male lover is talking about his wife's breasts are like these beautiful pomegranates. He wants to climb up the tree and just
and grab onto them, right?
grab them and enjoy
Yeah.
the fruit. So
enjoy the fruit.
This has been going on for a long time. We didn't just invent this in the porn era. Like big breasts are seen as the symbol of enough and that comfort and nurture. So, and when you look at, again, the amount of pornography that's dedicated to big breasts, it far surpasses small breasts. There's not a lot of websites dedicated to small breasts, although there are some, but by and large, the majority of it is everybody's looking for these, very ample, endowed women.
And I think also in that there is a reality to it. Is, and again, we're not talking about fake boobs, but fake boobs are kind of in vogue, or they kind of come in and out. They were really in vogue in the 90s and early 2000s. They're a little less so now. But there's this idea that, when you're touching, when you're seeing the curves, and obviously, we know this as age happens, shape changes. There's I've been seeing a TikTok of a woman who has kind of like the markings on the doorpost. She has for when a kid grows up, she has markings for her boobs with each kid. And it gets lower
Regarding
and lower.
how pendulous they become.
Yeah, that's right. And she's frowning and she's marking, where her nipple is. And but that's that in and of itself is like there is when there's a lot of like you're talking about the overflow of enoughness, there's also the wisdom and the care of knowing that this is a woman who can be with me and who can take care of me as we age. And I know a lot of our listeners are not young men. If you're young, I hope you're getting a lot from this, but a lot of our listeners are older men and dealing with the realities of, the destiny of life, and that everything passes. And everything loses its shape, but this ideal, this experience of I want to be connected with something that will bring me that life. And I really feel like when we talk about boobs, that is almost like a fountain of life. That's the biblical reference there in Song of Psalms. That tree of the fruit of your wife feels like life.
Yeah. And there's the other dimension to this is just kind of the difference between males and females in general. And there's this theory called whatever's exotic becomes erotic. So we tend to be attracted to that which is different from us, in general, unless there's, again, some harm that comes into our lives, and then we end up being attracted to what is like us. But and for different reasons, we end up seeing what is like us as exotic because we're kind of dissociated from our own masculinity or whatever. But in general, if a man develops on a healthy tract of sexuality, he's going to be attracted to a female when he starts to enter puberty. And her body is completely different.
Yeah.
Women's bodies are soft. Men's bodies are hard. Women's bodies are curvy. Men's bodies are angular. And, women's bodies are smooth. Men's bodies are rough and hairy. So you have these differences that then create the actual arousal, because I'm aroused by something that's different than me. And so kind of the breasts become that focal point. They're the part of a woman's body that's out there on display. Even if they're not naked, you still can see that woman's got big breasts.
Yeah.
Right.
And women, even modest women, typically tend to wear clothing that accentuates those features.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's kind of a core element too in the arousal around breasts, is just that, well, that's exotic. As a guy, I don't have breasts, and I have pecs and they're hard, but man, those are soft and they feel good. And yeah, you can put your head down there.
We're back to nap time. Here we are.
Take a nap. Be comforted.
Yes. But, yeah. Thinking about that, Scott, and again, we cover a range of topics, and I think universally, men who are attracted to women, will find this category very much like, isn't that natural? That's what I'm supposed to want. So where does it kind of go haywire when I get to a place where, hey, I've seen, whether maybe I went to an art museum and I saw, obviously in the Renaissance days, natural breasted women were the sexiest. I mean, full figured women were what was painted for centuries in classic art. And of course, statues before that in the Greco-Roman era. So where does it get to where I no longer just appreciate a natural breasted woman, a woman with natural boobs, and I start to have that, consume that. I need that to feel okay.
I think it's when, man, that's a really good question. Because where does normal, natural male arousal start to go off track?
Yeah.
I would say, we think in terms of unwanted sexual behavior in the categories of obsession and compulsion. So what's an obsession is it's a repetitive thought pattern that I just can't get out of. And I feel a lot of anxiety and maybe shame about that. And so I would say, if somebody's got a real fetish around breast size, or, I've actually talked to guys that had a desire to nurse their wife's breasts while their wife was breastfeeding their child.
Wow.
So, you get curious about that. Well, when did that develop? So the story about that is their mom abandoned them. So when they were a child, their mom left the family. So they're reenacting that sense of, abandonment and attachment wound by actually nursing their own wife's breast.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of thing is, am I just driven by this? Like it's the thing that I have to have. Again, we have to look at, if I have to have something, if it's not just a desire, but it's a driving thing that if I don't have that, I can't get aroused. Then I think, look at the story, look at your story, look at your formative story. What is it about the things that happen in your relationship with your mother or maybe other women caregivers that just made you have to have that? And it could be a repetition compulsion. I just heard this story the other day where a guy when he was 5 years old, he had a babysitter who was, in her early teens. And he said, "Oh, I'm a doctor and I want to do surgery on you." And he goes, "I need you to lift up your shirt." And so she goes,
Whoa.
"Okay." So she lifts up her shirt to her belly and he goes, "Oh, I need it further up to operate on you." And he was just,
Yeah.
he was being playful. Like, this is normal.
Yeah. A little groomy, but whatever.
Well, this is a 5-year-old doing this to a teenage babysitter.
Oh, okay. I misheard you. Okay. Playing doctor. Okay.
It's not the reverse. So
all right.
the little boy is playing doctor with the babysitter. Now,
yes.
normal sexual behavior is to play doctor when you're 5, 6 years old. So he's doing that with his babysitter. So she's a teenager. So she pulls her shirt up past her bra. Now it's gone from being a playful, childish thing to she's actually crossed a boundary.
Yep.
And she can't be blaming a 5-year-old for making her do that.
Nope. That was her choice.
So, and I said to him, "What did you experience when she did that?" He goes, "I got an erection and I left and I went behind a chair because I felt embarrassed or ashamed." And I'm like, so do you see this as an abusive experience? Because as a teenager, she has the ability to say to you, "Hey, honey, that's not what we do. I'm not pulling my shirt up. That makes me uncomfortable. And we don't do that as a babysitter and somebody I'm watching." But she didn't do that. But yet you got aroused by that. And now you feel a lot of shame attached to your arousal. And so this is a guy that particularly struggles with shame, a feeling of shame every time he gets aroused. Well, this is a story we'd never engaged in there. Sure enough, early in his life, arousal is attached to this sense of shame in that particular experience. So
I want to make very clear in this story. I think it's a great illustration and an invitation for all of us. I don't think that babysitter did anything wrong. Now, she could have acted in a more healthy way by setting the boundary, but she wasn't trying to seduce or abuse this boy. But when he asked her to do that and she obliged, it created a harmful situation, and that was abuse. She's not an abuser. She
Right.
created an unsafe situation, and our sexual development, guys, is littered with this type of benign sexual silence, which is exactly what you're talking about, Scott. That's where the shame comes in to become the consumer of our souls, of our hearts. And so when we are talking about this, and you may have heard that story and go, man, that sounds familiar. That's something like that happened to me. If you've never sat down and written out the stories of your relational and sexual development, then you don't know. And I don't know. I mean, I'll just be very blunt. I've got story after story after story that I wasn't really aware of how it affected me until I took the time to write it down and share it with empathetic, attuned listeners who could reflect back to me the things that I struggle to see.
Yeah. We have a hard time seeing those things in our own stories, but when you tell them to somebody else, they clearly go, hey, wait a second, she probably shouldn't have been doing that. Like, that's arousing. It's going to be arousing. And yet there's some confusion with you because you're 5 years old. You don't really understand what's going on with, girls' breasts at that age. And so that's a little too mature for you. And, there's all kinds of ways that you could get exposed to this. You could be watching a TV show with your mom and dad, and there's it's a decent show, but it flashes a breast.
Witness. 9 years old, and watched the movie Witness with my dad. First time I saw a pair of female breasts.
And Witness is a great movie.
It's a great movie.
But sticking those breasts in there does something to you at 9 years old.
I remember where I was. I have a mental image of where I was when I saw that.
Yeah. You know what? Now you're triggering an image for me because Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid has the same type of thing where Robert Redford brings the gun out and has her stripped for him. And that was probably the first time I saw breasts in a movie.
Yep.
What about Jaws? She goes naked. She's flopping around. You see everything while she's going swimming in the water. The opening scene.
It's the forbiddenness. It's the silence around it. It happens. You see it. It's arousing, but nothing is said. Nobody says, "Oh, what'd you feel?" I mean, even some question like, "Oh, what'd you feel when that happened?" I mean, and that may seem like a weird question to ask, but without the curiosity, that little boy is just left with his feelings, and he's left to feel ashamed.
Yep.
And so that's the invitation, guys, is there's a little boy living inside of all of us who is dealing with the silence of their sexuality. What happened to you, whether it was intentionally harmful or purposefully harmful, is still creating dramatic emotional, relational, even spiritual effects, even to this day. And I hate to say this, guys, but even if you do the work, it's not going to go away. It will not be as catastrophic in your behaviors, but the sadness and the feelings of being left alone and being hurt in those places they're going to remain. But we don't want you to be destructive to yourself and to the people that you love by not addressing them. So if this was your arousal template of the natural boobs, or if anything else is on your heart that you're like, listen, I don't know. If you say, I don't know, that is an awesome phrase. I don't know is music to Scott and I's ears. We love that phrase because it's the language of curiosity. So guys, keep listening to the podcast. We've got some really interesting stuff coming up in the next few weeks. And so we hope you'll join us and continue to invest in yourself as we learn about sexual arousal on We Got Balls.
And you do too.
Take care.
Don't forget to subscribe for more episodes. You can connect with Chris at pornfreemasculinity.com and with Scott at successfulmen.com.